I have memorized the exact angle of my sister's shoulders the moment she knows she is being looked through. Not looked at. Through. The way you look through dirty glass when you are searching for something on the other side and the glass itself is nothing. I was sitting in the gallery above the Sunder floor the afternoon it happened, the upper rim of carved stone where family and second-tier observers were permitted to watch the mid-season proving bouts. The floor itself was wide and pale, a circle of packed chalk dust ringed by a low wall of black granite, and the air above it smelled of iron and sweat, and the particular dry cold that settles over the Cathari proving grounds in the autumn half-turn. I had been watching my sister fight since dawn. She had won 3 bouts. I want you to understand what that means. Shale Vornis had fought her way through the lower bracket of the Compact's mid-season trials without a single concession. 3 opponents, 3 clean outcomes. By any metric the Cathari keep, she had earned her place on the competitor's bench beside the day's other victors, where water and salt rations were distributed, and the senior observers came down from their seats to speak with whoever had impressed them. But the Cathari have another metric, one that is not written in any bout record. They had filed her teeth. 2 seasons prior, in a discipline matter that I still cannot speak about without my hands tightening, the Compact Authority had ordered it done. The upper fighting canines, the ones every Cathari warrior spends years sharpening, the ones that signal rank and pride and the readiness to hold ground flat. A visible diminishment. A mark you cannot hide when you open your mouth, when you speak, when you drink in public, when you simply exist in a space where other warriors can see your face. It is not an official prohibition. Shale was still permitted to compete. She was still permitted to win. What she was not permitted to have in the unspoken grammar of the Sunder floor was recognition for it. You do not speak to the filed. You do not sit beside them at the competitor's bench. You do not bring them water or salt. You let them exist in their wins the way you let a shadow exist, present, undeniable, and of no consequence. I watched it happen with the precision of someone who has watched it happen many times. She walked off the bout circle after her 3rd win. She was breathing hard, her close-shorn hair damp at the temples, her blue-gray skin carrying the flush that comes after exertion, darker at the jaw and throat, almost charcoal. She walked to the competitor's bench and she sat at the far end, which was the only end available to her, because the other warriors had left exactly enough room between themselves and her position to make the message legible without making it formal. No one had said anything. No one would. That is the elegance of it. You do not need rules when you have architecture. She set her hands on her knees. She looked out at the floor. I knew that posture. It is the posture of someone who has decided to be a wall, to present a surface that cannot be read, that cannot be wounded, that cannot want anything. I had seen her practice it in our rooms before every event for 2 seasons. The shoulders down and level, the jaw forward, the eyes tracking the middle distance with exactly the expression of a person watching something that does not interest them. I could not get to her. Gallery observers are not permitted on the floor during the session rest. I sat and I kept my face composed because Shale has asked me, specifically and calmly, never to show distress on her behalf where others can see. She said it would give them satisfaction. She was right. I sat. It was the human who moved. He had been there all morning. I had noticed him the way you notice a variation in a familiar pattern, one figure among the senior observers who was built differently, carried himself differently, wore the dark tactical attire of the human liaison corps with the comfortable indifference of a man who has worn a uniform so long it has stopped meaning anything to him. Corvin Dast. I had seen his designation on the observer roster. He was attached to the Compact's Integrated Forces Commission, present to evaluate Cathari combat methodology for the joint training protocol the Council had been arguing about for 3 years. He had watched all 3 of Shale's bouts without writing anything down, which I had noticed because the other observers wrote constantly. He stood from his position at the senior rail, descended the 3 steps to the floor level with the unhurried motion of a man going to retrieve something he had left behind, and walked across the chalk dust to the competitor's bench. He sat down beside my sister. Not near her, not at a diplomatic distance that acknowledged the gap while declining to close it, beside her, with perhaps one handspan of stone between his left knee and her right. He set his water flask on the bench between them. He looked out at the cinder floor. He said, and I was close enough in the gallery to hear him because the stone carries sound in this place, he said, "Your footwork in the second bout, the lateral step before the clinch. I've been trying to figure out whether you planned that or whether you read it off her weight shift." My sister did not move. He waited. He was not performing patience. He simply was patient, the way old soldiers are patient, not because they have learned to suppress urgency, but because they have genuinely stopped being surprised by the amount of time things take. Shale said, "Her weight shift." He nodded once. "I thought so. I've seen that same read twice before, once in a training bout and once in actual contact. Both times the person who made it survived something they shouldn't have." He paused. "It's not a taught skill. That's what I'm trying to figure out, whether it can be." I watched my sister's jaw. I know her jaw the way I know my own name. I have watched it lock when she is holding pain in, watched it slacken the one single time she has allowed herself to cry in front of me, watched it set with the specific tension that precedes her stepping into something she has decided to do regardless of the cost. It is an expressive jaw for someone who has decided to show nothing. It did not lock. It did not set. Something else happened, something I do not have the right Cathari word for, though I have been searching. The closest is a word we use for the moment a held breath is finally released, not because the danger has passed, but because the body has simply decided that the breath is worth more than the caution. She said, "It can't be taught, but it can be demonstrated." He looked at her then. Full attention, the way a person looks when they have asked a real question and received a real answer and are deciding what the real answer means. He said, "I want to see that." She said, "Then come back for the afternoon session." He picked up his water flask. He offered it to her first. She took it, drank, returned it. He drank. He set it back between them and they both looked out at the floor. I want to tell you that the other warriors on the bench turned to look, that the senior observers leaned forward, that some formal recognition settled over the cinder floor with the gravity of a verdict. That is not what happened. What happened was quieter and, I think now, more permanent. 3 of the warriors on the bench shifted their weight. One of them, a senior fighter named Areth Kelson, whom I have disliked for 2 years and intend to continue disliking, moved approximately 4 centimeters along the stone in my sister's direction. It was not a conscious gesture. I am almost certain he did not know he had done it, but the architecture of the bench changed. The gap that had been calibrated to send a message lost 2 of its centimeters, and then 2 more when Areth's partner leaned over to speak to him and occupied the space that had been deliberately emptied. The human sat there until the rest bell sounded. He did not explain himself. He did not perform solidarity. He had asked a question that interested him and received an answer that interested him more, and he sat in the place where that answer lived because that was the only sensible thing to do. When the bell rang and the afternoon session was called, he stood, nodded once to Shale, and returned to the senior observer's rail. My sister stood. She rolled her shoulders back. She walked to the bout circle for her 4th match of the day. She won. Afterward, when I came down from the gallery and found her at the water station at the edge of the floor, I did not say anything about what I had seen. I had learned from her not to make much of things that should simply be normal. Instead, I said that her footwork had been clean in the final bout, and she said it had felt clean, and we walked out of the cinder floor together into the cold autumn air. She was holding her chin at an angle I had not seen in 2 seasons. I did not remark on it, but I have not forgotten it. The angle of a chin when someone has been reminded, by nothing more than a person sitting down, that their victories belong to them.